The moment the hot coffee splashed across her white blouse, the entire office seemed to freeze. Time slowed down in the strangest way, like the world itself was holding its breath. The sharp scent of roasted coffee filled the air, and a dark stain spread across the crisp fabric like an ink spill on a perfect page. Everyone around us pretended not to notice, eyes quickly dropping back to their screens. But I saw everything. I saw the shock in her eyes, the embarrassment she tried to hide, and the quiet desperation behind the calm expression of the woman who was known in the entire building as the strongest leader anyone had ever worked for. Before we begin this emotional story, take a quick moment. If you believe that small acts of kindness can change someone's life, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Her name was Victoria Harper, the senior director of the marketing division at a large corporate office in Chicago. People described her as disciplined, sharp, and almost intimidating. She walked through the office every morning with the quiet authority of someone who had built her success from nothing. Employees respected her, but they also kept their distance. No one really knew much about her personal life. She was a mystery wrapped in professionalism. My name is Noah Bennett, and I had been working there for just 4 months as a junior analyst. I was still the new guy who double-checked every email before sending it, and who stayed late just to make sure nothing went wrong. I came from a small town in Ohio, and this job was the biggest opportunity I had ever been given. That morning started like any other. The office buzzed with the low hum of keyboards and quiet conversations. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows overlooking downtown Chicago, painting long golden rectangles across the floor. Victoria stood near the conference table, reviewing documents while holding a cup of coffee. Then it happened. Her phone buzzed loudly in her hand, startling her just enough that the cup tilted. In a single clumsy moment, the coffee splashed across her blouse and the front of her skirt. The liquid soaked into the fabric instantly. For a split second, she just stood there, frozen. I could see her shoulders stiffen. Her eyes flickered around the room, noticing how everyone had suddenly become very interested in their work. Then she looked directly at me. Her voice dropped so low that I almost didn't hear it. She leaned slightly closer and whispered, asking if I could help her clean it up. There was something in her voice that caught me off guard. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was exhaustion, the kind that lives deep inside a person who has been carrying too much for too long. I quickly nodded and grabbed a stack of paper towels from the break room. I handed them to her, but she hesitated. The stain had already spread across the front of her blouse, and she clearly didn't know what to do next. Without making a scene, I quietly suggested that she could use the small storage room near the hallway. It had a sink and some cleaning supplies. It wasn't much, but it was private. She followed me there, closing the door gently behind us. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Victoria looked down at the stain and let out a long breath that sounded heavier than the moment itself. For the first time since I had met her, she didn't look like the confident executive everyone admired. She looked human. I handed her a damp cloth from the sink, and she carefully tried to blot the stain. The fabric was delicate, and the coffee had already soaked in deeply. As she worked, something unexpected happened. Her hand started to tremble. It wasn't dramatic, just a slight shake, almost invisible unless you were standing right next to her like I was. She leaned against the counter for a moment, eyes closed, as if gathering herself. That was when I realized this wasn't just about spilled coffee. Something else was weighing on her. The silence between us stretched, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like the quiet moment after a storm begins to calm. She slowly opened her eyes again and thanked me softly. Then she said something I never expected to hear from someone like her. She admitted that it had been one of the worst weeks of her life. The words came slowly, carefully, as if she wasn't used to saying them out loud. She explained that her father had passed away just 3 days earlier in a small hospital in Vermont. She had flown back to Chicago immediately after the funeral because the company was preparing for an important presentation that could affect hundreds of employees. She didn't want anyone to know she was struggling. She believed that leaders weren't supposed to show weakness. But the spilled coffee, the sudden mess, the unexpected interruption, it had cracked the perfect wall she had built around herself. Standing there in that tiny storage room, she suddenly looked less like a powerful executive and more like a daughter who had just lost someone she loved. I didn't say much. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need someone to stand beside them for a moment. She finished cleaning the stain as best as she could. The mark was still faintly visible, but it was manageable. Before leaving the room, she took a deep breath and straightened her posture again. The confident leader returned, but now I knew what existed behind that strength. The day continued normally, but something had quietly changed between us. Over the next few weeks, Victoria began speaking to me more often, not about personal things at first, but about projects, ideas, and ways to improve the department. She noticed details others overlooked, and she appreciated effort more than perfection. One evening, as most employees were leaving the office, she stopped by my desk. She told me she had noticed how hard I worked, how I stayed late, how I helped others without expecting recognition. Then she shared something that surprised me even more. When she was younger, just starting her career in New York, someone had shown her the same small kindness during a difficult moment. That moment had stayed with her for decades, and now she realized how powerful those small gestures could be. A month later, our department held the biggest presentation of the year. Executives from across the country attended the meeting. I was nervous just being in the room. Halfway through the presentation, Victoria paused. She looked across the conference room and acknowledged several team members who had contributed to the project. Then she mentioned my name. She spoke about how leadership isn't only about strategy or numbers. Sometimes it's about empathy, humility, and remembering that every person in a room carries invisible battles. The room grew quiet. I felt my face heat up with surprise. But what she said next stayed with me forever. She explained that even the strongest people sometimes need help cleaning up a mess, whether it's spilled coffee or something much deeper. That moment changed my life. A year later, I was promoted to a senior analyst position, not because of one moment, but because that moment opened a door to mentorship, trust, and growth. Victoria remained the same strong leader everyone respected, but the office atmosphere slowly became warmer. People supported each other more. Conversations became more human, all because of a small act of kindness in a quiet storage room. Before we reach the ending of this story, I want to ask you something special. Please write in the comments, "Kindness changes lives." It helps spread this message further than you might imagine. Years later, I still think about that morning in Chicago. A spilled cup of coffee could have been forgotten in minutes, but sometimes life hides its most meaningful moments inside ordinary accidents. And sometimes the strongest people we admire are simply waiting for someone to notice that they're human too. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be. Because in the end, it's rarely the big achievements that change someone's life. It's the quiet moments when one person simply chooses to help another.